You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty.
So like if we kind of think of us like all walking around with like these love buckets, and when you're around people who love you and they're pouring in love into your bucket, but if you don't have that self-love for yourself, it's like there's holes in the bottom of the bucket. You're still wondering if you're lovable. And so if you can do that self-work and cover yourself with self-compassion and understanding and acceptance, you can fill up those holes.
Hi everyone, I'm Felicia with A Bit From Within, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Today we're welcoming my dear friend, Joanna Sullivan, to the podcast. Joanna is a marriage and family therapist candidate who is Gottman Level 1 certified and who is working on her certificate for sex therapy. She has a private practice in Northern Colorado called Northern Colorado Relational Therapy, and she is married to her wonderful husband, Ben, and has 2 boys in middle school. When not working, she loves watching movies with her family and has used yoga and meditation to help her find her inner peace and her true beauty. We've been friends for several years, and Joanna has always been there to share her expertise in a very relatable way. She's somebody for me, she offers such tremendous insight into relationships of all kind, but especially the one that we're all navigating with ourselves. And that is part of the reason why I'm so excited to welcome her to today's episode. Well, welcome, Joanna. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I was so honored when you asked me.
I know this is going to be a wonderful time. You know, we've known each other a long time and we have always had such amazing conversations. You are definitely somebody that I feel is a heart friend of mine, that we can just be able to be honest. It's not always pretty, the conversations, you know, the things we talk about, but I always leave our conversations feeling better, which is why I'm so excited that our listeners get a chance to listen to this conversation between the two of us.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah. I feel the same way. It is interesting, you know, as we get older, you know, you look at friendships totally differently, and your qualifications for what makes a good friend really changes. And yeah, I felt like we really connected really early on because I loved how authentic you were. And, you know, when I'm around you, it's like, I know that I'm with truth and light and love. And yes, I always feel so grounded and empowered whenever I hang out with you. So
my gosh, you're going to make me start tearing up. We're just the beginning here. You can obviously tell that we adore each other.
Yes, we do. Full on girl crush for sure. Soul crush. Soul crush. Yes,
love
I love
that.
Your soul.
I love your soul too. Well, since our listeners don't have a chance they've never met you before, they're just getting to know you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? We've done an introduction. You are a marriage and family therapist candidate, but can you tell us a little bit more about what led you here? What kind of schooling have you had? What are you up to now? Just give us the lowdown.
Yeah. So marriage and family therapist, I have wanted to be a therapist for a really long time. I actually had a lot of friends telling me forever that I was their friend therapist. And, I've always cared so much more about, like what we were just talking about, deeper conversations and what is the truth and how can we get to the truth and what is the root of, you know, what's going on and the issues that you have in your life. So I've always been very, very interested in that. I actually, in my undergrad, was pursuing elementary education to be a teacher. And I was so glad that school really got us into the schools to be like a teacher's assistant really early on, because I found out really early on that that's not what I wanted to do.
Not for you.
I couldn't care less about what their ABCs were and, you know, if they knew their numbers and all of that. It was more, I wanted to know how they were doing and how it was like at home and, you know, and all of that. And so I was really glad that I was able to early on see, I'm looking for something else when I interact with other people. And so then I switched over to psychology, then got married to Ben, had some babies, had 2 boys. And then I think it was about when my youngest was getting into kindergarten, that's kind of when, as a mom, your head kind of pops up and you're like, okay, so I'm sleeping. Things are a little bit more under control now. What do I want to do? And I really, really wanted to go back to school and finish, and become a therapist. And so I needed to finish my undergrad. So I did that at Regis. Then I went right into grad school, the marriage and family therapist program at Regis, and finished in May of 2020.
Woo-hoo.
So yeah.
Some good things happened in 2020, right?
Right. Yes, for sure. It was a weird way to graduate. That is for sure. Yeah. Definitely not what I dreamt of, when I started my journey.
How did you know that you wanted to go into marriage and family therapy? Like, what drew you to that subject in particular?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it is really different. They had a Master's of Arts in Counseling, and that turns into the LPC track, which is quite, that's more common, is what you'll see in a therapist, is that they're an LPC, licensed professional counselor. I wanted to go to the marriage and family therapist track because the way I looked at it is that I know that we're not islands, and that we are constantly reacting to the relationships that we are in. Of course, there are moments when we can sit and be still and really get in tune with who we are, but we bring that knowledge into our relationships, and we kind of like test it out. Like, is this going to be okay if I do this? Is it going to be okay if I respond to you in this way? And if we get negative feedback from that, like, nope, they want me to be the same, we alter who we are to fit that system. And so as marriage and family therapists, we look at the systems that you are a part of and how that system is forming how you behave and how you act and even your beliefs about yourself. And so I really felt like in order to really promote change in someone, I wanted as much people that were a part of their system as possible, which is why I love working with couples and families, because you can really, really see change and sustainable change when you're working with the system. Because if everyone realizes, wow, this doesn't work, everyone's working on trying to interact with each other better, I mean, that change is so much more solid than you trying to figure out on your own, I'm going to try to respond to this person better. And then that person never changes and you're just constantly having to be different. So I did want to say, there are some LPCs out there who have had systems training. Yeah. So that can be something that you can look at. You don't have to just go to marriage and family therapists. I would just ask them, do you have systems training? Have you worked with, like if it's couples therapy, if they work with couples or if they work with families, because there are some LPCs who've definitely gotten some systems training. So I would just ask for that.
Because finding the right person is important, right?
Oh my gosh. Yes. It is totally fine to, kind of, like interview or like speed date several therapists. Speed date. I mean, a lot of us will offer, free consultations. And so definitely take us up on that. Ask us questions, find out what is a good fit for you, because we're all so different. There's no way, just because, our universities don't spit us out as robots, which is so amazing. We come with so much of our own stories and our own background that we bring into the education and training that we have got. And so, I mean, therapists can really, really vary. So I definitely encourage you to really just keep trying to find a therapist that you both feel good about, especially if it's couples and families. Try to get someone that everyone feels good with.
I love that. So I was watching an episode of Grey's Anatomy this week, and I'm not going to give anything away, but there was a conversation where somebody had gone to therapy and she was like, nope, this was a horrible therapist. Like the guy just kept after every fourth word. And she's like, so I'm not, that's not for me. That's not for for me. And the other person said something like, oh, so if you went to a doctor and you didn't like how they were, talking, you just never go back. You just never get your problems fixed. And it kind of made the point of like, just because you don't click with that therapist doesn't mean that therapy is not for you. It just maybe means that therapist wasn't for you. It doesn't mean it can't work. And I'm sure that you feel that quite a bit too, being in this profession.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, it is kind of hard to know at the beginning, if you are a good fit. So just try it out, give it a couple sessions. If you're not signing a contract with them or anything, not signing the rest of your life away with them. But yeah, good fit is really, really important because therapy is such a sacred space. And there's a lot of vulnerability that happens in therapy. And you want it to be with someone that you feel safe with and that you can easily build trust with. I think without those aspects in your therapeutic relationship, it can make the hard work of therapy that much harder and just harder for you to get to that place of vulnerability where probably the truth lies.
My own experience with going to therapy is like, sometimes it's just nice to have somebody who's in your corner, like whether or not they're always agreeing with you, that is definitely not always the thing, but at least somebody who is there on your behalf. And that can just be such a powerful tool for all of us as we navigate life. Like life is really challenging. It's nice to have a kind of third party perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely.
I like that I can be the person in the room who's validating all of the experiences, because you are going to have a different perspective from your partner, from your family members. Of course, you're standing in your own skin, you're looking at it from your perspective. It is going to be different from the other people in your system. But that doesn't mean that their perspective or your perspective isn't true. They are all valid. And so that is one of the most powerful things that I do, is being like validating everyone's experience and being like, of course you would feel like that. That makes so much sense. And me holding that space helps your partner or family members be like, oh, okay, I can hold that space for them, even though I don't agree with them or I wish it was different. I can still say, wow, I see that from your perspective and I can understand why that's really hurtful for you. Right. That's huge, just to be validated in your perspective.
It's like so many of us are walking around just feeling like our experiences aren't validated or we're not seen, but it's such an important thing for all of us as humans.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that has to do with, how much information we're tapped into and how we're so aware that there's so much more going on. People are dealing with so many other things. It could be so much worse that really leads to us invalidating our own experiences. And yeah, just being lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of this whole kind of lost in the shuffle, and you said you graduated in May of last year, right as COVID was happening. I'm curious, do you feel like entering kind of your work right now as a therapist, since COVID has affected all of us so much, do you feel like that you've seen any of like the COVID impact on, you've probably felt it yourself, your patients are probably feeling, I know I've felt it. How do you feel about that part of the conversation right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, part of my first sessions is really like getting a history of, it's like, so say I'm working with a couple, it's like, okay, how'd you guys meet? How was dating? How'd you get engaged? Just kind of go through like these milestones of their relationships, just, see how it went.
Yeah.
And it's weird now. Like I've handwritten in, how'd you deal with the pandemic? Like, how has pandemic life been for you? Because it's a little bit of a big deal. just
a little bit of a big deal.
A little bump in the road, this pandemic that we're going through. And, oh man, yeah. it's a huge impact. It's, I think something that I've seen really often, especially with couples, because I work a lot with couples, is one couple is feeling one way about the pandemic, and the other the other partner is feeling differently.
Yeah.
And, especially when we're talking about going out and touching things and exposing ourselves to COVID-19, it's crazy making. It makes you feel so isolated, so different from your partner. It can make you feel like, whoa, what did we do? Am I with the right person? And it's like, okay, well, when you guys were dating and when you got married 15 years ago, you obviously weren't thinking, hey, are they pandemic proof? So it's just kind of like, okay, let's just normalize that this is weird for everybody.
Right.
And the work schedules have changed. So now they're seeing each other a lot more, or seeing each other very differently. The stress has been put on them and, making them cope in ways that they've never seen before. So yes, it's absolutely part of the conversation now.
Even just the houses we live in, right? Like now you're sharing an office with somebody, or you're trying to figure out how to make your house that functioned one way into two different workspaces. I mean, talk about stressful.
Yes. Yeah. And it just seems like work, we always work so hard to have boundaries with work and life, and work life and personal life. And they had to be blurred. They literally had to be.
Yep.
And so finding those boundaries have been really hard. So, but then on the other hand, although this pandemic is very new, obviously, and we've never dealt with that, we're still working with the same themes of, how can I help you with this? Is there something that I can do to ease the stress in your life, to show you I've got your back, to show you how can I show that I love you in these ways? And we've had those types of conversations for forever.
Yeah.
So in some ways it's very pandemic specific, but in other ways it gets back to how are you showing that you are committed and that you love each other and that you're safe?
Yes. Do you have any maybe go-to tips or tricks on like how to seek each other out during this time when maybe you're not feeling safe to travel, or you're not feeling safe to go out on a fancy date? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. We've really had to get creative. I love, the ideas of turning your home into a restaurant. One of you guys takes the night and you're like, okay, I'm going to, set up the area, put up the candles. I'm going to make the dinner. Making dinner for each other can be really special. The other thing that we still have is we can still go for drives, and so going on a drive together, going somewhere that's especially here in Colorado. We're so close to the mountains, within like half an hour you could be driving in the mountains. Find a new place to go. You can add some spontaneity to it, and play the game like left, right, straight. So whenever you get to an intersection, you each decide if you're going to go left or right, and you take turns doing that, and you see where you wind up.
I love that. That's a great one.
Yeah, that's really fun. And then, with all the online exercise classes, like your yoga classes, do yoga together. You guys can introduce each other to your form of exercise, and you can try it together. You don't have to feel embarrassed being, the new person in a new exercise class. You could just stream it and do it at your home.
Just trying new things together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. It has been so hard. I think that for me, one of the things that has been a theme, not just in my life, but in the people that I talk with, is just trying to navigate the stress right? So it's like you said, people are dealing with stress in such different ways. Some people like to minimize it. Other people want to make sure they don't make any mistakes. So they're trying to over protect themselves. And it can be a little bit hard where you feel like you're just in a different place or a different space. And I would love to just, get a little bit of your take on, is it normal for people to be in totally two different places at once? Like, does it mean that your relationship is broken forever if you feel like you're just not on the same page? Like, what advice do you give to people who are feeling that?
Yeah, of course it's normal. I mean, again, it's definitely been highlighted with the pandemic, but it's nothing new in relational dynamics. Yeah, I think the best way is try to really listen to each other. Carve out some time to talk about what is the background that's driving your stance? What values come into play when you talk about this opinion or that opinion? And, a lot of times we listen just to respond. Like we're just waiting for that break in the sentence so that we can respond and try to convince the other one to think the way we're thinking. But if you really shift that to listen, to truly understand, when we hear the backstory of our loved ones, the meaning that goes behind their behaviors, even if their behavior doesn't change, just knowing why they did it and what's driving that behavior can bring so much understanding to you. And there's more tolerance to that behavior, or just more understanding why they are the way they are. And if you both are creating this environment of, I truly want to understand you and I truly want to understand what's motivating you, then all of a sudden, if there does need to be a behavioral change in you, it's coming from a place of, I understand why this is important to you, and I'm going to show you that I love you and I support you by changing in this way. That can facilitate such meaningful connection. And it can be something that has always driven a wedge between you to all of a sudden being like, wow, this is where I really, truly understand you better.
Wow. I love that. So I love that you said that, it is normal. I feel like that's one of the things that is really hard in relationships. Like so often on social media, we're just getting people's highlight reels. We're seeing all of the happy pictures, the happy Easter pictures. Here's my whole family on Easter. We're looking so great. Sometimes we have those friends who are like, here's the behind the scenes picture. But we tend to, I think, sometimes feel like all of the struggle, all of the bad stuff, all of the stuff that we don't want on social media is that we're the only ones going through it. And do you have any, advice, just general advice on like, what does it mean to be like, what's normal in a relationship? Like, is arguing normal? Is having conflict? Like, I know that that's been my experience in relationships. And I've so often felt like maybe I'm broken. But what do you think?
Oh man. Yeah. Thank you for, talking about that and realizing how much we need to see more normal because we are very, very highlight reel right now. I definitely grew up with the mentality that, well, if you found the one, then there would not be arguments. There would not be fights. There would not be conflict. And oh my goodness, what a terrible and hurtful perspective on a relationship, and way too much pressure, much pressure. Yeah. It is absolutely normal to have arguments, to have disagreements, to not see eye to eye, to not understand each other. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you guys both came from two totally different families. And even if you both grew up in Colorado and you both, went to public high school and, it's still, your families dealt with things different. They conveyed their needs differently. They showed their love differently. They created together time in a different way. They managed conflicts in a different way. And you are coming from that like education, that relational education. As you guys are growing up, you're learning, this is what adults do. This is what dads do. This is what moms do. They're your teachers for relationships. And so of course you're coming from two different like schools of relationship. And so then when you come together, likely what you're doing is you're doing what worked in that family of origin system, and he's doing what worked in that system. And then you come together and you're like, why isn't this working? Like, this has worked for me my whole life until I met you. What's wrong with you? You know, and your partner's thinking the same way. And so it absolutely, okay, you're going to have arguments. You're going to have misunderstandings. What really sets you up for success in your relationship, for your relationship to move forward in a healthy way, is how do you repair? How do you come back from those disagreements and those conflicts? Is it just, oh, we have blow-ups and then we're silent, and then in the silence we're just kind of waiting for the next blow-up? Or is it coming back together and being like, okay, shit got crazy. That was a little crazy. I'm not even quite sure how we got there. This is how I feel like I got there. This is what I felt like you were saying. Can you tell me what was going on for you? And then again, back to that truly understanding each other and being like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't realize when I said, why don't you just go do dinner by yourself? That reminded you of how your parents would just have you go up and eat dinner in the room because they didn't want to have kids around, or, you know, or anything. Like, all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is a whole different backstory that I didn't even know. And now I understand that better. And now I want to care for you in that way. And so, it's all about how do you come back? How do you recover? How do you repair from those conflicts that'll set you up for a successful, healthy relationship? And it'll lead into the next conflict, but you're going into that next conflict with more of that backstory, more of that understanding. And so then at times when you get into a conflict, there's going to be, you might even start being like, does this remind you somehow of your childhood in some way? And then at that point, you know, I've worked myself out of a job, which is so awesome to see, you know, them really use those skills and that perspective of being like, hey, maybe what's happening right here isn't all about what's happening right here.
Oh, I love that. And what it made me realize that one of the things I wanted to make sure that I asked you about is, like you just said, you work yourself out of a job. So if somebody were thinking like, hey, maybe I might want to go see a couples counselor, a family therapist, do you have to be like having a crisis to start going to that? Can you go just because you're like, hey, we've never done this and we want some new tools for our relationship? Like, what is the right mindset to start going to therapy? Mm-hmm. And then maybe you can also touch on like, when do you know you're done?
Sure. Yeah. Come to therapy as soon as, like, I love the phrase, when you know better, you do better. So once you know that, okay, we need some help, come and find a therapist and start the work. It doesn't, I don't want you to think, oh my God, I should have come sooner, or I should have, no. You know, you need help. Come and get help. Absolutely. So no shame, no guilt about that. I mean, we see couples and families that are in all areas of life. There definitely are the ones who are like, hey, let's try to start this relationship on a great foot. And then the others who are like, we're on our last foot. We're on our last toe. We're about to walk out of this relationship. Can you please help? I actually read that research shows that on average, a couple will be in relational distress for on average 6 years before they seek therapy. Wow. And of course, that's just average. That's not everyone, but it's just like, oh, you don't need to, like, don't wait that long,
Yeah.
that's a lot of discomfort and a lot of conflicts that don't have resolution, that you guys aren't figuring out how to repair with each other.
Can you go if you maybe aren't having a lot of conflict, but you just feel like you want a lot of tools? Like, would you be happy to get that couple that's like, hey, we've been married for 10 years and we're feeling like we're pretty good, but we just want to check out what we can learn from going to therapy? Is that a thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing because, our marriage, needs to grow and change as we do, especially if you're a couple that started out without kids, then you had kids and then the kids are gone, like, has your relationship grown up, and is it meeting the needs as an empty nester the same way as it was, when you guys were newlyweds? And so, I love when couples come in and be like, we want like the tune-up, we want to just make sure that we're supporting each other in the ways that we are. Resentments aren't building up, and maybe even preparing, like, hey, our last kid is going off to college. We want to make sure that when we are empty nesters, we are able to still connect with each other. Or, hey, I'm pregnant. We know that a baby's coming. We want to make sure that we can still connect with each other while having this baby and going into this next phase. Like, you can come for all reasons. When do you know when you're done? I think that's a lot of feedback with your therapist. I value feedback from my clients. Like, I will never be an expert in their relationship or their life. So I need their feedback and being like, hey, this is working. This is not. This is kind of where we feel like we need some growth. So I would definitely, that's something that you would work with your therapist and see if they're feeling like you guys have more of a foundation under you. And then, you ease out. So instead of, you go every week, then it's every other week. And then it's once every 3 weeks. And then it's once a month. And then once every 3 months, once a year, stuff like that. And we love when you come back in and check in with us, because it's so awesome. We help you guys. We help you guys have a better foundation, a better way of meeting and talking to each other. And then we send you off and you go do the amazing things that you guys are going to do together. And then oftentimes we never hear back from you. And it's just oh. And so we love for you guys to come back and do check-ins and just tell us how you guys are doing or how we can help you in this next phase of your life.
I love that. And I think that's so reassuring, because I think there is a little bit of a stigma around like, oh, I've done something so wrong that now I have to go see a therapist, or we're so broken that we have to go. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, it can actually just be like, it's a tool of empowerment, a tool for growth and abundance, right? Like you said, like, why do we want to go for years in pain and in conflict when we could actually learn to break through those things and actually have more intimacy and more times when we're smiling and being understood and have that amazing. So like, I love that we're having this conversation, that we are right now normalizing that it's okay. It can be challenging when you're in a relationship to maybe both of you agree. So do you think that it's just as valuable if like, you're like, I think I want to go get some tune up. Like, I'm not maybe feeling super great in my relationship. My partner's definitely not going to come, but is there space for that too? Like, just you come as you are.
Absolutely. Yes. I see individuals as well. And in that work, we're working on the most important relationship, which is your relationship with yourself. And being able to recognize what you need, what are your boundaries, where are your wounds, and what kind of interaction and support and love do you need, so that then you can bring that into your relationship. Because there is some change can happen when one part of the system inserts change. Like that really can start kind of like a domino effect into your system, whereas other people start to make changes based on you loving yourself and being more grounded in who you are.
Yeah.
So yes, that's absolutely, if the other partner doesn't want to come, then you come by yourself. And then, a lot of times it can be that stigma of, oh my gosh, the therapist is not going to be on my side, or, there is, along with the stigma of being like, oh, there's something really wrong with you because you're going to therapy. There's also like, well, let's keep family business in the family.
Oh, it's a huge thing that we fight with, huh? Stigma.
Yeah. And so by you going to therapy and you seeing, oh my gosh, this is so much different than it's portrayed in the movies, or then, we still, our stigmas are so old in everything, our stigmas are like decades old.
They're outdated.
Yes, so outdated. And so then you can see and bring to them being like, this has been an incredible change for me. This has been an incredible space for me to go to. And now all of a sudden, now you're talking about the benefits of therapy. They're probably going to listen to you a lot more, especially when they see you change and you be happier and you just be more comfortable in your skin. Then that can absolutely open the doors for them to be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try it.
I love that you can kind of be like your own promoter, your own ambassador of self-love and your own relationship. What is your take on how important self-love is?
Yeah, this is something that I have really been focusing in on personally the last several years. I definitely did not grow up in an environment where self-love was portrayed as vital and so important for yourself and for the people around you. So I still have a lot of learning to do in this area and a lot of growth to do. But I truly have been able to, see that you can't love someone until you've loved yourself. Now that has been so watered down and used so much. Absolutely. Can you love other people? You absolutely can. Yeah. But like but there's a deeper love that you can offer to other people once you have figured out how to love yourself. And once you have figured out that I am my safe place and I know that I am worth breathing, living, being loved, having success. Once you get rid of all those caveats on yourself, then you don't put caveats on other people. Mm-hmm. You help them take off their caveats. I think once you've accepted yourself at a level of, I am my safe person, I am my own home, then I think it just flows out of you to then give that safety and that home. So like if we kind of think of us like all walking around with like these love buckets, and when you're around people who love you and they're pouring in love into your bucket. But if you don't have that self-love for yourself, it's like there's holes in the bottom of the bucket. And so that it doesn't matter how much love you can get from other people. At the end of the day, at the still of the night, you're still wondering if you're lovable. You're still wondering if you're worth love. And so if you can do that self-work and cover yourself with self-compassion and understanding and acceptance, you can fill up those holes, and you're starting to fill up your own love bucket. And then with the loving people around you that are pouring into you, I mean, you're overflowing and it's more than enough. And you're just surrounded by all of this love and nothing is being drained away or taken from you.
Oh my gosh. That actually brings me to this place where I'm just like, that is what I want for myself. That's what I want for everyone, is just to get to that place where we know that we know our worthiness, that we are filled up with self-love, that we could be of service to other people because we are not so in need of having to service ourselves, which there's nothing wrong with being on the journey of being like, hey, I can't help you right now because I'm learning to love myself. That's a tall order. It takes time, but gosh, the way that you describe that,
where like where we praise the person, oh, they're so selfless, they never think of themselves, they give to everyone. I'm like, I'm not impressed by that. I'm like, why aren't you taking care of yourself? I love that you're taking care of other people, but why aren't you doing that for yourself? I'm like, no, I don't think that's a compliment anymore.
I think you're so right about that. And, that's kind of like the work that I'm doing with A Bit From Within is just being that advocate, that mentor, reminding people like, it's okay to take 10 minutes out of your day to meditate. It's okay to just do gentle yoga. You don't have to go burn, 400 calories in a power yoga class. Maybe you want that because you want to move, because you've got fire in your, in your soul, and you love moving, and that helps you feel more inspired. But you don't have to be so hard on yourself all the time. And I think that we all need those moments. We all need that breakthrough. And that's why I love the work that you're doing so much, because I know it's like you said, every therapist kind of brings their own experience to the table. And I know how much yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and like you said, your own personal journey with learning to love yourself. I know that has to come out in your work as a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And I remember a professor told me that I can only take my clients as far as I've taken myself. And it's so true. It's so true. I can't help them tread on ground that I'm not familiar with myself. And so that really has really inspired me to continue to keep taking care of myself. I don't think anyone wants to go to a therapist who's like, oh, I haven't eaten in, 10 hours and I didn't sleep well last night and I haven't exercised in forever, who's not taking care of themselves. And so, but yeah, I want to help my clients get to, deeper areas of love and acceptance and thriving. And so I really try to do that with myself.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. And Joanna, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts. Where can people find you if they've been inspired by this conversation? They want to check out your work, maybe even think of hiring you as a therapist. Where can they find you?
So they can find me. My private practice is Northern Colorado Relational Therapy. My website is www.noco relationaltherapy.com. You can find me there, my bio, how to schedule sessions with me, what my session fees are. I am doing in-person therapy and teletherapy. So I am doing in-person therapy in Longmont. I have an office in Longmont. And then online therapy can be anywhere in Colorado. So we connect over our computers. It's on a HIPAA compliant video platform, and we can do our therapy online that way. But I can't, it has to be in Colorado. I can't be outside of Colorado. But if this podcast has really inspired you to seek help, please reach out to me anyways. I will provide you with some referrals or resources about how to find a therapist in your area that would work for you. And online therapy hasn't been a big thing for, therapy and counseling for a long time. But with COVID, they really opened that up. And I don't think it's going away. Obviously, I don't know the future, but I think once it's here, it's going to stay. And yes, I mean, it has helped so many of the rural areas who don't have a therapist in their town, or the town is so, tight knit that they feel like it wouldn't be unbiased, or just would be uncomfortable to see a therapist in their town. Now, oh my gosh, it has completely opened up for them.
And it's a huge time saver for people who are like, they're like, I'm so busy, I don't have time for this. It's like, well, maybe you can take a lunch break, or maybe you can stay an hour later at work, but you stay in your office. It just gives you a lot more flexibility to be able to actually do this for yourself. Well, you guys definitely go check out Joanna. Joanna, at the end of every episode, I usually do a card drawing. So I just kind of shuffle a deck and pull a card. And I think you will enjoy being a part of this process. Do you want to be on the line with me while I do this?
Okay. Absolutely. I have an affirmations deck too.
Do you?
Sometimes I will do at the end of my sessions.
Which is your deck?
I got it off Etsy. It's these, they're handmade. It's called Inner Wisdom, Growth and Connections.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. Will you do with the card drawing? Let's do yours. You just shuffle and pick a card for us.
Okay. Yes. Let's see. What do we have? Okay. One fell out. Curiosity.
Ooh, that is amazing. Does it have, is that how, like the message is just like, be curious?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So often what I'll do is I'll pull that out usually at the end of the session. And then I'll just be like, what does this say to you? Like, how is this important or meaningful to you? And so then they usually will say, oh yeah, they'll have a story about it. And then sometimes I'll add something to that. And I think like, as far as curiosity goes, I like that curiosity, it doesn't have, like a rule book or an expectation or shoulds or shouldn't. Like curiosity is just like, I don't know, I'm interested in this. I want to find that out. And so I think that can definitely be applied to, when seeking out therapy, trying to find a therapist, just become curious while you're reading the bios of the therapist and see what comes up in your soul and in your heart that really is just like, okay, there's something about this therapist that really ignited in me, that really resonated with me, and then go on that journey with them with curiosity and hope and the desire to thrive. And I think all will be well.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I was thinking curiosity is even just such the ultimate card for our conversation. Is like, there can be this level of playfulness, right? It doesn't have to be so black or white. Like there's only one way to do it. Only one therapist who can help you. Only one kind of therapist you should see. It's like, no, be curious, be open. You don't have to agree with everything you hear. You don't have to agree with everything your partner says either. Like you can be curious about why they think that. You can be curious about yourself. Why do I think what I think? Curiosity is such a powerful tool for us all.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much for joining us here today. It was so nice to just be able to have this conversation about all of these amazing tools to support ourselves as individuals, but also in the many relationships that we have. Be sure to check out Joanna online. I've put links for her website and her social media handles in the show notes so you can easily have access to her. And if you are not already subscribing to the A Bit From Within podcast, be sure to hit subscribe for more wonderful insights like this one that just connect to those tiny bits from within you. Thank you so much, and until next time.